My name is Lucas and I am the producer of a horror documentary, exploring abandoned locations and making theories about their history, which we post on YouTube. One day, a friend who was a doctor told me to go to an abandoned clinic where he interned a long time ago, and so we did. My team and I went to an abandoned clinic to create content. We prepared, and after 2 days we went there, exploring every corner of the clinic, searching for stories and clues that could help us piece together the puzzle of that place. It was when we heard a strange noise coming from the second floor. We looked at each other, but decided to move forward. We climbed the stairs carefully, the boards creaking with every step. When we reached the top, we came across a dark room, completely empty. That's when we heard a sob coming from the corner of the room. With trembling hands, we illuminated the area with our flashlights, trying to find the source of the sound. That's when the light hit a patient hidden behind the door. He had a beaten face, open wounds, and a malnourished appearance. We were shocked to see that he was alive, in a place we thought was completely abandoned. The patient looked at us with a scary look and ran into the dark hallway, disappearing into the shadows. We were stunned by what we saw, but we knew we couldn't stop investigating what was happening in that clinic. Fear began to set in our minds as we prepared to face the obstacles that lay ahead. After the incident, all members of the film crew were terrified and afraid to continue exploring the clinic. However, I knew we needed to continue the documentary to achieve the success we had been hoping for. The obstacle was to find a way to move forward without risking our lives. We tried to stick together, but the tension and fear were palpable, making it difficult to continue filming. I started looking for solutions, trying to find a way to overcome the obstacle. That's when the idea occurred to me that we needed to split the group, send one person at a time to explore different parts of the clinic, so we would have a better chance of documenting everything without risking everyone's lives. It was a difficult decision, but necessary so we could continue with the documentary. However, that didn't mean I was any less scared. I knew I could be the next person to face some kind of danger or even death, but the possibility of success with the documentary and achieving the fame we wanted was strong enough to keep me going and overcome this obstacle. As we were exploring the place, my friend and I stumbled upon a dusty diary in one of the rooms. The book looked old and worn by time, but still intriguing. We began to flip through the yellowed pages and found some notes about the history of the clinic. Most of the pages were illegible, but some parts stood out, mentioning cruel experiments that were carried out on patients. My heart began to race as I read about electric shock and lobotomy treatments. The descriptions of patients in agony and pain made me feel sick. Suddenly, we heard a noise coming from one of the rooms. I turned to see what it was, but couldn't see anything. I became tense and my friend began to look at me in fear. He pointed to the diary, where there was a page completely filled with a single sentence: "They're still here." At that moment, I felt a chill down my spine and my eyes widened in fear. I could barely believe what I was reading. I looked at my friend, and his eyes were fixed on the diary, his face contorted in fear. Suddenly, we heard footsteps echoing down the hallway. We froze, not knowing what to do. The footsteps grew louder and suddenly stopped right in front of us. We looked up and saw a figure standing before us, wearing a white outfit stained with blood. It was one of the patients who had undergone brutal treatment. We were paralyzed with fear as the patient advanced towards us with an expression of anger on his face. I tried to move, but my feet were glued to the ground. That's when my friend screamed and the patient turned towards him. I took the opportunity to run down the hallway, leaving my friend behind. I knew I shouldn't have abandoned my friend, but the fear was too much for me. I just wanted to get out of there alive. With our hearts pounding, we ran through the darkness, trying to find a way out, but the doors were locked, all of them. No matter how hard we tried, they wouldn't open. And then, we heard a sound coming from the end of the corridor. My friend and I looked at each other, knowing that we had to face whatever was coming towards us. We grabbed our cameras and positioned ourselves, ready to film. And then, we saw the silhouette of a figure approaching slowly. It looked human, but something was wrong. Its hands were long and slender, its nails looked like claws. And when we finally saw its face, we realized it wasn't human. It was something else, something that shouldn't exist. I was trembling with fear, but I knew I had to keep filming. My friend shouted for us to try and get out, but the doors were still locked. That's when the figure stopped right in front of us and stared at us with its empty eyes. I felt my heart stop when it opened its mouth and emitted a guttural sound, as if it was trying to communicate with us. That's when I realized that creature wasn't alone. Other figures started to appear, coming from all directions. I was paralyzed with fear. I didn't know what to do, and then, one of my friends fell to the ground, struck by one of the creatures. That's when we realized that this wasn't a normal documentary, this was a nightmare. I was there, cornered and afraid, when suddenly my doctor friend appeared. I felt a momentary relief seeing him, thinking he would save us, but to my surprise, he stood there, watching everything while everyone around me was brutally killed. I screamed for help, but he remained motionless, with a cold gaze. When it was my turn to die, he approached and shouted to all those monsters. It must have been the most terrifying words I ever heard. Here it is, the soul of 8 humans, one for each patient. I killed, now be happy and leave me alone. I was shocked and terrified, realizing that the friend I trusted was a cruel and ruthless killer.